Have you ever looked back at a conversation you had and wondered, did I say the right thing? Or did I come across as defensive or closed off? We all have these thoughts from time to time. It's normal to think about how our actions or the things we say are perceived by others. After all, we do the same to people around us when we analyze the signals sent our way.
We are constantly transmitting cues to others, so telling others how they should treat us based on our cues, and others are always sending these cues back to us about their emotions, their true feelings, their comfort. And so I set out to try to codify and catalog these cues so we could speak them like a language, so we could understand exactly what cues we're sending to others and also know how to read the cues that are being sent to us.
That's Vanessa Van Edwards, a human behavior researcher and the author of Cues, Master the Secret Language of Charismatic Communication. She points out that there are 96 distinct verbal, nonverbal, and vocal cues, each different in their own respect. For her, understanding these signals didn't come so easily. It was a skill that had to be studied.
I am a recovering awkward person, so cue reading did not come naturally to me. I have a hard time processing social information. And I also thought from a very young age, since I was always feeling awkward, oh, well, charismatic people, it must be an innate trait. You know, you're either born with charisma or you're not. And thank goodness, I found the research finds that charisma can be cultivated, charisma can be learned. And so when I set out to catalog these cues, I found that this was sort of my secret side door into confidence, that I'm not an extrovert, I'm more of an ambivert, and that if we can take control of the cues we send, if we know exactly what to do with our hands and our body and our face and our voice, that's actually a way that we can cultivate an authentic sense of charisma.
The first step to doing this is by recognizing the possible negative cues you're giving off. Van Edwards highlights this example.
So the question inflection is when we ask our statements instead of saying our statements. So this is when we go up at the end of our sentence. So if I were to get on this interview and say, hi, my name is Vanessa. I'm here to talk about cues, and I'm really excited to be here. If I did my entire interview in that up talk, you would begin to doubt my competence. And that is exactly what the question inflection does. It's a cue that signals questioning. And so a lot of the time, people who are very smart and very intelligent but anxious or nervous, they give away all their confidence and power by asking their statements.
Van Edwards takes it one step further and compares two different vocal inflections side by side in a voicemail greeting. One recording comes across as anxious and unsure, while the other sounds relaxed and confident.
If I were to say, hi, this is Vanessa. I'm happy you called. Leave a message. I sound a little bit uncomfortable and anxious, and actually, our cues are quite contagious. That can transmit anxiety. Whereas if I were to use a downward inflection, it would sound like this. Hi, my name is Vanessa. I'm so happy you called. Leave a message. Totally different types of cues.
Beyond vocal cues, we also give off visual or body language cues. These body signals, whether it's intentional or unintentional, can convey that someone's lying or withholding a piece of information.
The lip purse is very simple. You can try this with me. It's when you mash your lips together, you press them down into a hard line. So if you press your lips down together, that is a universal cue of withholding. When we want to hold something in, or we don't want to speak too much, or we're trying to keep it together, we lip purse to try to keep our thoughts together. This is a really important cue, one that you don't want to accidentally send to others. It literally signals, I'm holding back, I'm not telling you everything, which always makes people nervous. You also want to try to spot this cue. If you're with someone in a presentation or a pitch or on a date, and they suddenly lip purse around an answer, that is your perfect opportunity to say, that all makes sense. Are we all good? Do you have any questions for me or anything else I should know? That is a perfect opportunity to find out just a little bit more information.
In addition, something as simple as crossing our arms can be seen as a negative cue. Van Edwards sees this all too often in marketing pictures, dating apps, LinkedIn profiles, and when people are sitting or standing in a meeting. It can be comforting to cross your arms, but from the outside, it can signal that you're closed off and unapproachable. Instead, keep your arms at your side and turn towards the person to show that you're listening and you care. So, what are some other reliable body language cues that give off positive signals? Van Edwards points to one indicator on the TV show Shark Tank that a lot of successful contestants use when first greeting the judges.
One thing that we found was that the pitches that were going to go really well, so entrepreneurs more likely to do well, was when they immediately non-verbally greeted the shark or the panel of sharks. So a non-verbal greeting is when we have our palm up, when we raise our eyebrows up, when we verbally acknowledge someone, oh, Robert, it's so good to see you. So on the one hand is in the first 10 seconds of any interaction. And that can be a video call, that can be in person. You want to non-verbally greet the person you're with. So every video call, I always start with a palm up. Hey, good morning, nice to see you. That little wave, that little tiny signal of acknowledgement is exactly what makes people feel like, I'm seen and heard. It's so small, but just that little palm up gesture when you walk into a room or hop on video will immediately begin to trigger trust and warmth.
Another big tip when it comes to body language is maintaining the same rules on a video call that you would adhere to in person.
In person, we sort of know we don't want to get too close to someone. We don't want to be a close talker. We want to make sure that we're a couple feet away. On camera, it seems like all these rules go out the window. So people will hop on a video call, open up their video, and they're, a couple of inches away from the screen. That is like being a digital close talker. And immediately, instinctively, when we see someone who's too close to the camera, we actually feel like they're in our intimate space. Even though we know logically they're across the land, across the digital space, that is a signal that will immediately trigger mistrust. So what I want you to do is a very specific thing is I want you to measure the distance between your nose and your camera. And I want you to make sure it's at least 18 inches away. Research shows that 18 inches or closer is the intimate zone. The moment you go from 18 inches to 3 feet, that is a sweet spot. It is much easier to interact with someone when they're in that zone.
From body language to verbal cues, making these little changes over time can shift how you're perceived in daily interactions. And don't fret if it feels overwhelming or unnatural at first. Van Edwards says consistent practice can help turn these signals into something you do more unconsciously.
I would love for folks to think about learning cues like learning a foreign language, right? So when you're learning another language, you learn word by word. It's the same thing with cues, right? There are 96 cues in the book. If you tried to use all 96 at once, it would be like trying to go and be fluent in another language in the first day. First, I want you to pick the cues. Start with the cues that sound the most exciting to you, the cues you think you can use the most often. And there are going to be some cues you try on it and you're going to love. There are going to be some cues that you're like, I have to work with this. And there are going to be some cues that don't feel like you. And that's okay. I want you to stick with the cues that feel really authentic and exciting.
To find out more about our guest, Vanessa Van Edwards, and all of the various cues out there, visit viewpointsradio.org. You can also check out her new book, Cues, Master the Secret Language of Charismatic Communication, available online and in bookstores. For more behind the scenes, search Viewpoints Radio on Twitter and Facebook. This segment was written and produced by Amira Zaveri. Studio production by Jason Dickey. I'm Marty Peterson. Coming up next week.
We don't have any FDA-approved medications for cocaine or for methamphetamine or for cannabis.
The difficult task of finding effective treatments for addiction. Then,
we think of JFK and we think of RFK. We think of the Kennedys of the past and the roles that they played and the tragedies that they've faced.
Uncovering the Kennedys you've heard little about. I'm Marty Peterson.
And I'm Gary Price. These stories in depth on your public affairs magazine, Viewpoints.
And that's Viewpoints for this week. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to learn more about upcoming shows and find a library of past programs on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify. Plus, you'll always find previous segments and more information about our guests at viewpointsradio.org. Join us again next week for another edition of Viewpoints.